I will say, as of right now, I would much rather have Trump there than Biden.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted Chugiak-Eagle River Assembly candidate Gretchen Wemhoff. We contrasted her campaign with that of her Bronson-endorsed opponent, Kevin Cross. But as a listener immediately let me know, I had forgotten the Eagle Exit woman. They were referring to Chugiak-Eagle River Assembly candidate Vanessa Stephens. Ms. Stephens, a third-generation Chugiak resident, is a committed advocate for making businesses wheelchair accessible, since she has been using a wheelchair for over 20 years. She is also transgender, but absolutely does not want that to be the focus of her candidacy. Although encouraged to run by her longtime friend and current assembly member for South Anchorage, John Weddleton, her campaign does not have a website, has submitted no fundraising reports to APOC, and has no discernible field operation. We discussed this on the show today. Well, Vanessa Stephens, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
I grew up right here in Chugiak.
Born and raised?
Born and raised.
And did your parents move to Alaska?
My grandparents moved up here right after World War II in 1946, I believe.
And did they settle in Chugiak?
Yeah.
Wow. So
we are still sitting on the original 5 acres that my grandfather homesteaded back in 46.
Wow, that's so interesting. And so I guess you're committed to staying in Chugiak. This is your home.
Well, been here a long time. Our family has never broken the string of being here for almost 80 years.
Wow. And so we'll just jump right to it. Why are you running for assembly?
I am running for assembly because I had talked about it for a while and thought about it, and during the pandemic, I saw some things I didn't really like in the way the government handled things, and the assembly and the governor, or not the governor's done really well, but the mayor was just disappointed in and felt like things were being done thinking and treating people in Eagle River and Chugiak like we were stupid.
You're part of Eagle Exit? I mean, are you participate in Eagle Exit? You support Eagle Exit?
I have been going to the meetings, attending the meetings. I guess what I would say, I'm following their progress. At this point, they are still finding their way. I was actually, my father was a borough assemblyman for the original Chugiak-Eagle River Borough when we were independent for a few months. And he was elected. He didn't even run for office, do anything to try to get elected, and he got over 70% of the vote. But he was very well known in the community. He was literally the community mechanic.
Is he Bill Stephens? Is he
Bill Stephens is my grandfather. He's the one that came up in the 40s.
Okay.
Okay.
You're following Eagle Exit. You don't think they're quite there yet, but you support separating from Anchorage?
I am very swayed by my father because that's what really got me interested in politics. As a teenager, I used to go to the assembly meetings, and I got to know Lee Jordan, and I got to know some of the other assembly members. And my dad was two of the big things that he was really, really pushed for, even though I think at the time Chugiak-Eagle River was still too small really to be its own community, be its own city, town, borough, whatever you want to call it. He was really behind that. He thought that was something that, whether it happened then or later, something that was very important to him. And the other thing was taxes. Even then they were starting to talk about a sales tax. And he vehemently just hated a sales tax because what he thought that was just government dumping a tax on businesses for them to collect for the government, and which is effectively what it is. So those are the two biggest things that my father imprinted on me, and I tend to be swayed a lot by what he had, what his visions were.
The main critique that I've heard is that because of the integration with the school system, fire, police, that separating from Anchorage would require a amount of tax that Eagle River and Chugiak wouldn't be willing to pay in order to supply their own school district, their own police, their own fire. So I hear what you're saying about sales tax, but what would be your proposed solution for paying for those services if you were to separate from Anchorage?
Well, right now, Anchorage has one of the highest property taxes in the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
We're, I think, in the top 10% of property taxes. So if we didn't drop the property taxes, but I would eventually like to see property taxes dropped, but they've got some ideas on business cooperation with the government. Because I brought up things that I actually brought up a couple of things I hadn't thought about, like jails and courthouses, and if this is going to be a city thing or a government thing or a federal thing, state issue. Many options there, but if the things that the original thing you talked about, police, fire, that type of thing, was co-opted with businesses, and businesses were able to. I'm not sure exactly. There's a, and I haven't read it yet. I've looked at it. I haven't finished reading it, but it's a book called, I think, PPP, and I forget off the top of my head. I can't remember what they stand for, but it's essentially business cooperative with the government, where business pays things, government pays things, and there's a payback to the businesses for being involved in helping the government run the city or the state, the city or the town.
So speaking of police, you're retired from the Anchorage Police Department?
Correct.
What'd you do for the Anchorage Police Department?
I was a forensic, I did a lot of things. That was in the early days of computers. I did a lot of computer forensics. I did a lot of computer development. By my second or third year there, I was in charge of all PC maintenance, development, everything to do with PCs, with the B25 Burroughs PCs that we had, the Macintosh PCs. I wrote a program that monitored drug sale activity. I managed the Anchorage Police Department time accounting system app task for the last 5 or 6 years. Anything to do with PCs, it came to me.
I want to contrast you a bit with your two opponents. It sounds to me from the conversation we've had so far that your politics in general would fall a little bit more on the conservative side. A lot of, in fact, impact from your father, less property taxes, no sales tax, and a dissatisfaction with the way Eagle River Chugiak has been overlooked by Anchorage.
Well, and I'd like to put it this way. Anchorage and Chugiak Chugiak-Eagle River are really inextricably linked, but Anchorage is very different than the Chugiak-Eagle River area. In fact, a lot of people, especially in the early years, would work in Anchorage and live in Eagle River because it was so much more spread out, so much more diverse, so many more, and there weren't nearly as many houses. You were able to walk your dog. We didn't have all the bike paths and the roads and the lights.
Can you contrast your positions with Kevin Cross, who is the Bronson endorsed candidate?
Bronson, Allard, and
now Kennedy, correct.
Endorsement. If you want another politician, if you want somebody who's going to listen and possibly be swayed and have their position suggested by other people, then if you're satisfied with that, then vote Kevin. Vote Gretchen. She's been on the assembly for 4 months. She knows what it takes. But one of the things I've said in a couple of my talks was, I am not a politician. I would be technically a politician if I get elected to the assembly, but even then, I don't want to be considered a politician. I want to be somebody who is there making sure the right thing is done by the rest of the assembly members, by myself, being an avid listener to the constituents, finding out what they want to know, what they need to know, those who want to be involved and finding out what's going on. I want to be as transparent as possible to make sure that they know what's going on and what the assembly is doing.
Was there a specific incident or moment when you knew I'm going to run for assembly?
Actually, there is. I can probably give you the exact minute. I have a very good friend on the assembly, and I had talked with them about running for probably a year or so. I had mentioned to them a couple, 3 times. I said, I don't like what they're doing here. I don't like what they're doing there. I've gone in. I've given my opinion. Stood in line. Sat in line. My wheelchair. Given my 2 minutes of opinion or 3 minutes of opinion. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. I said, what do I need to do? What do I need to, what should I do? Run for assembly? And within probably less than 5 seconds, all capitals with 4 or 5 exclamation points, they said yes. And I just went, I could do that.
I want to just flesh some of that out. Were you opposed to the Anchorage mask mandates?
Yes.
Was there anything else specifically that the assembly pushed that you felt that you really strongly opposed?
Well, what really helped me pushed me over the edge was I was following the assembly in Bronson and Dunbar. Really it was a close race. Bronson won because the area tends to be a little bit more conservative. And if I understand correctly, he's never held an office before either. He's never been elected to anything.
Did you support Bronson?
I'll keep that personal. But the thing that really pushed me as far as my thinking was I felt like they were the assembly and the mayor were acting like children over different issues. And it's like, why don't you go in the back room, talk it over for 5 minutes. Don't make it such a public issue for some of these simple things that you could work out easily. Having the glass removed during an assembly meeting, doing some of the things Bronson's done or just seem, and especially doing them in public, I think gives a bad impression to the students, to children, to high school students, to anybody who wants to get into politics. It was just a bad example of how to work together. And so for the last, year and a half, they have been almost at each other's throats. It's like if they get an opportunity to show the other one up, they do it. Mm. And to me, I cannot grasp what point and progress they're making by doing that. They are making the standard citizen embarrassed sometimes to have elected them to be making the choices and making and saying and doing the things that they've done.
You mentioned at the very start of the interview that you have felt Dunleavy has done a good job. Are there specific things that you can share that you've really appreciated that Governor Dunleavy has done?
I'd have to think about all my separating, because that's an issue too. Because a lot of people ask you or talk to you and say, well, we need this change, we need that changed, and we need more roads, and we need more this, more that. And so I have to say, I don't know if that's federal. I don't know if that's state. I don't know if that's local. Mm-hmm. I don't know who is in charge of that. So mm-hmm. in order for me to know, I have to find out who is the final word and who gives the final say and who we've elected in whatever position it is that makes that final choice, makes that final decision, and has the most say. I thought Dunleavy has done, I thought he handled the pandemic well. Really his only biggest kind of blot was when Omicron didn't clear up as quickly as we had hoped. But again, we had already kind of taken the road we were going to take, and it was a little late to really do anything. And that's why I was a little disappointed in what the Assembly did when they voted the masks in. It was less than 2 months, and they voted them in, and poof, they voted them back out again. And to me, that was like, why? It didn't make sense to me.
I'll just push back really fast about the mask thing. I think anytime in government, there's always kind of a delay. So I think there was the fear that the hospitals were overrun, that they were going to crisis standard of care. So the Assembly felt like, well, we need to react in some way to protect our hospitals. There was these long nights of testimony that delayed for several weeks before the mask mandate went into effect. And then I think they'd already set a standard that once the hospitals reached a certain level that the mask mandate would expire. So I think, I don't think their intention was to, impose it haphazardly. So I think there was some planning behind it. There was some logic behind it. You may disagree with the logic, but I think they would respond that they had thought about what they were doing.
No, and I would agree with you. There were extenuating circumstances, but I still have yet to read a lot and very significant reports that say that the paper masks really are that beneficial.
Do you support Lisa Murkowski? No.
And she's a rhino.
Mm. You support Dan Sullivan?
Yes.
Do you support Donald Trump?
I will say, as of right now, I would much rather have Trump there than Biden.
What do you think the main thing is that Trump would do better than Biden?
Russia didn't invade any place during his 4 years, but during Bush, during Obama, during Biden, Russia has invaded other countries. A lot of people like to say, well, it's because Bush or Trump was being paid. He was a lackey for the Russian government. He was already doing all the things that Russia wanted, so they didn't need to have a war or take over anybody's land or change the map, so to speak, of the European countries. But
so you think if Trump had been president, then Putin would not have invaded Ukraine?
I'm not so sure about that either. I think it would have been less likely, but right now I think Putin is mental. I think he's lost a lot of, kind of like Stalin. Stalin the last few years just really lost his senses. And I think Putin is 69 years old. This is his last shot. He's kind of either do something now, try to get the USSR back, try to make a difference, try to put my name in the history books as revitalizing the USSR, doing something. And I think what it's done is he's now lost control of it. It's like, now I've got to do it. I've got to make a difference. I've got to change something, or else I'm going to go down as the biggest loser of the century for Russia.
What do you wish Biden would do?
I wish Biden would make us energy independent. What would make the biggest dent in both us and China and other countries is if we could become an energy exporter. And it's going to take us, at this point, they say I've heard estimates they can get the Keystone Pipeline up in 8 months. If they could do that and start working on progressing other development. And sure, I'm all for electric cars and clean fuel, but what we're doing is buying dirtier oil from other countries, and it actually takes fossil fuels and rare earth minerals to make these electric cars. And to make the electricity to charge these cars takes fossil fuel. So I don't understand what they think they're saving.
Do you worry about climate change?
I just don't think. We had an entire ice age that was before mankind was really having much of any kind of impact on the world. So us trying to decide what the climate's going to be like, how much it's going to change, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. We just know. So we know about 1/10 of 100%, or of 100% of what we need to know to be making decisions like that.
Are you the first transgender candidate for office in Alaska for elected office? Do you know?
I have no idea. That never entered my mind when I filed for office.
Well, can you tell? I mean, are you comfortable talking a little bit about your journey as a trans person?
I will, but I want to make sure we don't get into it. I mean, that's not the issues that I'd like to talk about, and I don't want to. I mean, spending time on that takes away. I mean, I'm like everybody else, unless I want the same type of questions to be asked of me that you ask of anybody else.
Roger.
And singling me out as, okay, you're different because of this, that, or the other thing, and we're going to focus on that. I'm not real fond of that.
No, I understand. I mean, I would say that I would ask any candidate, I ask different questions to every candidate based on the research that I'm able to do on them. So I'm not trying to, sort of single out or sensationalize it, but I just know that is a specific aspect of your life that makes you a different candidate from others. And so I was just bringing it up as something that I think people would be interested in knowing more about if you felt comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm not uncomfortable talking about it. I'm curious where you heard this, or is everybody talking about this, or is this something that...
No one's talking about it. But I just felt that I'm a gay man. So I am part of that. I consider myself part of the LGBT community.
Well, you would be.
And I definitely have discussed, I've interviewed gay candidates, and I have discussed that issue with them. So I didn't, it's not that I heard it from anyone. And, it's not something that we need to include in the interview. But that's why I brought it up.
Okay, fair enough. So what was your question?
If you could just talk a little bit about that journey. Well, and you know what I will say that I think is also interesting is for me, and this is me speaking for myself, I felt that me and my husband and our child would be most comfortable in Anchorage. I think of Chugiak-Eagle River as being a more conservative area where it would be more challenging.
Eagle River Chugiak's a little bit more liberal, I would say.
Okay. So I think it was just an interesting question. I think it might be why I asked so many questions about, are you staying in Chugiak? Are you committed to Chugiak? Because for me, I would, and I could be wrong, but I would assume that I might be uncomfortable living in this area.
I have no problem at all living in this area. Being in a wheelchair, I'm not exactly out shaking hands and pounding on doors in the winter. But in the summer, I'm out there on the bike trail, and I'm out driving around on my wheelchair. I've got a brand new wheelchair in the other room, but it's got some problems still, so I'm not using it. But yeah, a lot of people have known me. I've grown up out here. I have known hundreds if not thousands of people in this area. Some have gone, some are here, some have passed on. It's a long story if you got into everybody that I've known or met or become friends with out here in this area. So yeah, I've never been approached about it, threatened about it. Never. There's been no issues about it because I'm part of the community. I've been here for a very long time.
I was going to talk about the wheelchair because being diagnosed with MS and then eventually being in the wheelchair. I mean, that's another special story. And I don't know how comfortable you are sharing with that. I would also, again, I have to be educated on this. I think it would be very difficult to be in a wheelchair in Chugiak as opposed to.
Extremely so. And part of what in my advertisement in the Senior Voice, one of my main issues is Americans with Disability Act.
ADA. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of ADA. Just going to the meetings that I've gone to in the places where I've given speeches already, I'd say about half of them are not fully ADA compliant. And in my opinion, I think it's beneficial to both the business and the client, the customer, to make more places ADA. Mm-hmm. And legally, they're supposed to be ADA. Mm-hmm. They're going to get more clients who come in. People are going to come in, spend their money. It's going to cost them a couple of dollars to put the ADA equipment in, but you're going to get more people to come in. I can't tell you how many times I've turned away from businesses and not gone in and not spent my money at places because I couldn't get in. I could not find an easy way to get what I needed, and I ended up ordering it online or finding some other method, somebody who could deliver, or finding a company who did have was ADA compliant and allowed me to get in, allowed me to do what I needed to do, get what I needed. And to me, I'm just one, and I feel very fortunate. I've been in a wheelchair for 22 years. I feel very fortunate that I'm still as functional. I drive. My van is set up. I've had it for 18 years. This one I've had for 18 years. Drive it everywhere.
I would say, without a doubt, if you were elected to the assembly, just having an assembly member who uses a wheelchair would bring a level of awareness to that governing body that they may not always have just by your presence. Do you have any specific legislative priorities, things that you would want to achieve if you were elected to the assembly?
Did we jump from being a martyr driving an electric wheelchair in the assembly to all of the hopes and dreams I have on the assembly?
I was just going back to it. I mean, we can go wherever you want to go.
Well, I was going to finish your other sentence.
Okay.
Or the other question about my transition.
Yes.
I have been, and I think you can probably, this would be something you can relate to. This is something I've known about myself since I was 13. Since puberty started, it was like, I am very uncomfortable transitioning into a teeny bopper, into a teeny bopper boy, and I knew then that I didn't know exactly what was wrong, but I knew something was wrong. Mm-hmm. And it was a long journey, and the only person who knew up until, even my children didn't know, the only person who knew until they passed away was my wife. And she was very supportive, but she says, just not in front of the children. And unfortunately, I lost her in 2007. I lost her physically. She was in a vegetative state for 4.5 years. So she actually died in 2011. And so I spent 2 or 3 years in very deep grief, very wondering how I was even going to proceed, how I was even going to survive without her. Being handicapped and I did have my van by then, but I was shattered. And then I said, the only way I'm going to survive is if I become myself, my authentic self. And that's when I decided to start my transition.
And was your family supportive?
My children were, actually. My children have been very supportive. My mother, she's of a previous generation, and she loves me, she supports me, but she doesn't really support the transition. So,
do you have brothers and sisters?
I do have a brother. He's down in Utah, very Mormon. He had 5 children, and every one of them went on a Mormon mission. Very impressed by that. I sometimes worry about the fact that he did a little bit of, I felt like he kind of brainwashed him a little, but maybe he didn't. Maybe that's what all 5 of them wanted to do. But it's very, 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 very rare for that many children to all follow and do missions for the Mormon Church.
Did you grow up in a Mormon family?
I did.
Okay.
Which made things even more difficult for my condition.
You said that for a long time that it was only your wife that knew.
Yeah.
Did she know from the very beginning, or did you tell her later?
I told her later.
What was that like?
To be brief about it, and I give her a lot of credit for this, she researched it. She didn't say, okay, we're done, that's it, this is something that's unacceptable, I can't deal with you like this, with this over our heads or between us or whatever. She spent 2 weeks going to the library, researching it on her lunch hour. And I had no idea this is what she was doing. I was expecting, okay, I'm looking for divorce papers on the bed every day. And came home, I got home a little bit earlier than her most days, unless I had started my business by then. But every time I came home, I would check the bed or check the table for divorce papers, and they never showed up. And finally, one day she was sitting there, she got home before I did, and called me upstairs to talk with her and sat me down, and she explained how it would work, that I could do what I needed to do when the kids were maybe out of the weekend with friends somewhere else. If I went somewhere else, then I could do what I needed to do. But other circumstances off limits, and that was a huge relief. It was not everything that I needed, but it was a lot. And I gave her a lot of credit for doing everything that she did.
And did that give you permission to reach out to the trans community or make some trans friends, or you kept it all in?
Yeah.
And you didn't do any vacations or anything? No. So really, you had that freedom, but you didn't really take advantage of it.
Right.
So if you were elected to District 2 Assembly, the other Assembly member would be Jamie Allard, who has actually made some transphobic statements on the Dan Fagan show. Would you be able to work with her, or what would be your strategy there? And I don't know if you have a relationship with her or know her already.
I've seen Jamie. I have not met Jamie personally. I place it on her. If she wants to be unpleasant about it or say things that maybe are not as friendly as they could be, that's her choice. My choice is to be there to solve problems, to be transparent to the Eagle River Chugiak community, to do the work that I'm hired for to do what my constituents want done. And if she can work with me on that and we can come to an agreement, I don't see why she would pick this one thing to be so much against that she couldn't work with me. And I'm, having worked for the police department, having worked for the government in that sense, the municipality, having had my own business, having done 3 years of tech work on the North Slope, having started my own business, having managed businesses. I've gotten very good at working with all types of people. And I think, I really don't think there would be a problem.
So speaking of your campaign, it was a challenge for me to find a lot of information about your campaign. Unlike the other two candidates in the race, there's not a website that I could find. Can you talk about your campaign and what your path forward is?
Well, that's exactly true. I'm relying on going to the events, talking to people, telling them what I think, giving them my ideas, my thoughts, replying to questionnaires, making myself available to people who do know me. A lot of the people in the community do know me and already know me and have known me for a long time. In fact, when I was putting one ad together for the Senior Voice, she said something about, well, you already got the advantage of name recognition. I'm going, really? Is it really that? She goes, yeah, everybody knows Stephens.
Well, Vanessa Stephens, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Sure.
This is going to be an interesting race. I look forward to seeing how things turn out.
Well, and I would say, just as a final statement, if people want what they've gotten before, vote for Kevin, vote for Gretchen. They're both really nice people, both very pleasant. I like them a lot. But if you want what you've gotten before, vote for them. If you want something new, vote for me.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Corey Coolidge for making this podcast listenable. For the record, in 2018, trans woman Kathy Otterston was elected to the Fairbanks City Council, and trans woman Liz Like was elected to the North Star Borough Assembly. So Vanessa Stephens is not the first trans candidate in Alaska. Also, we have reached out to Kevin Cross's campaign for an interview, but as of this recording have not heard back. In 2 weeks, we bring you our interview with Tufts political science professor Eitan Hersh, author of Politics is for Power: How to Move Beyond Political Hobbyism, Take Action, and Make Real Change. Please tune in.